So it has become time to start today's webinar, Creating a Consistent Digital Employee Journey in a Complex Organization. That's a complex title of a webinar, but we'll guide you through it. So a warm welcome to all viewers, and of course to you, Zakaria.
Morning, morning.
Good morning. We'll spend the next hour or so talking through how NLTG, Nordic Leisure Travel Group, has managed to create this consistent and positive, we must add, digital employee journey that the headline suggests. And well, I'm excited. Are you, Zakaria?
I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time now. So I'm looking forward to share our insights and how we at least have been working with our organization and Catalyst One as our HI system.
Sounds really good. So today I will be asking you questions, and we encourage the viewers to do the same, right?
Exactly. So at any given point during the presentation, you're more than welcome to write your questions in the chat, and we will keep track on them during the presentation, and whenever possible, bring up your questions as well, so we can answer those.
Yeah, exactly. So and I will moderate. So if I don't ask your questions right away, it might be that I have chosen to save it for later. So have patience, but please do ask questions because that makes it interactive. That makes it interesting for you, viewers, and we're doing this for you. So please ask questions. And I hope you will find out how to do it. There is a section in my upper right corner. I think you have the same view, but if it's not in the upper right corner, it's somewhere on the screen, and it's a question mark or an pratbubbla in Swedish, or so you'll find it. Good. So I think maybe we should present ourselves, Zakaria.
Yes, let us. I think any great presentation starts with an introduction. So for all of you listening in, my name is Zakaria, and I work as an HR specialist in people development in Nordic Leisure Travel Group. I've been working in the company for the last 10 years in different parts of our organization. So I've been working abroad in our overseas organization, but I've also worked in our customer center, and of course, the latest couple of years in our HR department where I sit now. And in my daily work, I specialize in learning and development, leadership, recruitment, and also HR processes, which makes perfect sense in terms of working with an HR system and working with our organization and how we can um, work in the best way possible in an HR system and with HR data. And that's also for the reason that I'm one of the super users in what we call NLTG People, which is the name of our HR system in our company. So that's a bit of my background. And of course, we are a holiday company. So I thought it was suitable with some pictures from some of my favorite places to go or some of my previous holidays. So if anyone's wondering, the the picture from the ocean is from Crete, and the green picture is from Madeira. So if you're curious to go visit those places, those are actually some of the destinations that we sell.
Perfect and good to know. And also I might present myself then, who is asking the questions today. Well, I am. My name is Marcus, and this is just a spoiler alert. This is unfortunately not an NLTG destination. So I thought I would have it a little bit more in season for the Nordic climate, and also a signal that I hope that it will be possible to go with NLTG to the Alps one day soon, because then I will. So I've been here at Catalyst One for 10 years now in commercial roles. My focus has always been on value creation, and that's part of why I think it's so interesting and exciting to have this dialogue today, because I know that you guys have created a lot of value in implementing Catalyst One as one part, but also doing a lot of stuff in your organization, which we're going to talk about today. And I've seen quite a few of these journeys, both in terms of vendor selection, when the spark, when the initial spark is there, that you actually realize that we might need something that could help us to digitalize, to make it more effective, and so on. But I've been through also a lot of implementation projects, so it's a privilege for me to be able to follow a lot of interesting companies through the whole journey, which I have done with NLTG. And spoiler alert again, I think you stand out. I think you have managed to do a really successful project in many ways. So I hope we'll go into conceive that message today to the viewers. That's also part of why I initially encouraged NLTG to participate in the HR System Project of the Year here in Sweden. And we're also proud to announce that we are 1 out of 3 finalists. And the prize ceremony is tomorrow. So really exciting times ahead here.
Really
But for
exciting.
now, all we know is that we are 1 of 3 finalists. Yeah, that was a little bit about me, but let's skip further to the actual theme of the day. So I think that almost everyone has some kind of relation to NLTG or to your brands or one of them.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
could you just set the scene company-wise? Who is NLTG?
Yeah. So when talking about a complex organization, I think it's nice to actually know what we mean by us being a complex organization. But we're a bigger company with different brands spanning more than 60 years in the travel industry in the Nordics. We're split into 4 markets, the 4 Nordic markets, with different brands in each country. So depending on where you're from or where you usually travel from, you can travel with Wing Sweden, Norway, or Chatterbody Finland, or Spies Denmark. And you might also have traveled with our own airline company, which is Sunclass Airlines. But above that, we also have a different brand in Sweden called Globetrotter. We also own our own hotel concepts overseas called Sunwing, Ocean Beach Club, and Sun Prime. And we do also have a retail company named Airshop. So all of these brands and names are a part of Nordic Leisure Travel Group. So already now, when talking about having a complex organization, we're split into brands across 4 countries where we sell our holidays from. But then, of course, having hotels overseas also it gives us employees in other countries as well, other than the Nordics, which I'll get a bit back to. But yeah, we arrange package holidays, different kind of package holidays, and we do that from the 4 Nordic countries, with yeah, from different offices, from different places, and working in with different processes and different kind of products across these different brands.
And you have somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 employees, depending on time of the year, right? Is that
Yeah, I would say not usually. I say that we have around 3,500 employees. Yeah, but then of course in the summertime we have a lot more employees in our hotels in our summer destinations, which are then closed during the winter. So that it gives that kind of difference in the numbers depending on season.
right? So the scene is set. But could you tell us a little bit more about how the HCM system journey started for you?
Yes. So basically, for a bit of context, we were actually a part of a different company back up until 2019. But due to the bankruptcy of Thomas Cook, we in the Nordic countries were basically up for sale. And during the months, the fall months of 2019, we were bought, and from then became Nordic Leisure Travel Group. And before we had time to regroup and restructure and kind of build our own company as just a Nordic travel company, the pandemic hit and we were forced to lock down. Of course, working with package holidays, it's not something that gives a lot of traffic during the pandemic, so that made us kind of slow down and kind of stop our operation for some time. So it wasn't really up until the pandemic started to slow down again that we were able to kind of sit down, restructure, and look at what kind of systems we wanted to work with and what kind of processes we wanted to work with in the company that was now Nordic Leisure Travel Group. So it wasn't before the end of 2021 that we then started to implement what was then Catalyst One, which was the system that we bought into. So basically, all of the changes took a couple of years to happen, but that of course gave us time to kind of look at our restructure and figure out what we wanted to do. So that ended up being an advantage for us in the end. Now that we have implemented a new system in the entire organization.
Right. So now we have that kind of background as well, but more specifically, what were you looking for and why when you started this journey?
Yeah, so basically the whole project was that we wanted to digitalize and streamline HR and the employee experience in NLTG. We set up some objectives before getting to work, and that was we wanted one source of master data for HR data. We wanted just one picture of the truth, regardless of where would you would look from. You would get all the information you needed from one place. And we also wanted just one picture of the organization. So having all these different brands and being in a different structure pre-bankruptcy of Thomas Cook, we were set up in different ways, and we wanted to merge that into one picture of the organization. And then, of course, we wanted to synchronize and handle HR processes digitally. So again, working in different countries, how can we get more or less the same processes, be more efficient and agile working across countries, offices, and teams with working with HR, and of course, digitalize our work as much as possible to make it smooth and efficient and easy. And that's also one of our people promises in NLT, that it should be fun, rewarding, and developing to do a good job in NLTG. So having that in mind in all of these objectives was also an important key for us in kind of figuring out what to do with an HR system. So with all of those objectives, we wanted to have the possibility to analyze on our data, to get all the data we need, but also to involve leaders and make HR process a more consistent part of leadership in the organization. So being able to also give more of those HR resources digitally to leaders, be able to use it more easily, and also handling more with the same resources. So regardless of which country you were sitting in, anyone could basically do the same thing and work with the same systems. And then, of course, by putting that all into one place, we can improve the employee and the leader experience, have better processes for joiners, for people who move in between the organization, for people who leave us, get better processes with pre-boarding, onboarding, better introductions, have better possibilities with learnings, be able to create more e-learnings, have a more centered learning management system, and of course be able to work with performance a lot more, which is of course working with personal objectives, follow up on performance, personal development, and working with other kinds of feedback functions. So basically having as much as possible in one place when it comes to the employee journey, and by that also involving leaders as much as possible to create a great employee journey.
Right. So this all sounds when you say it, and when we looked into this one slide, it sounds pretty obvious. It sounds easy, but was it?
Definitely not. So this is all just theory, of course, and setting up an objective and kind of figuring out, okay, this is all we want to do. And it was only from then that we kind of got started with figuring out what do we then need, what kind of systems is on the market, and what kind of system can actually deliver all of that to us. But for a long time we were looking, and we had a lot of different companies in the mix, and we were trying to figure out who can deliver what and how much. And by the end, we ended up going with Catalyst One, and we did that based on um, the different functions that the system could deliver, and how we thought that we could manage this complex organization from one place, by having a system that gives a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility in how that you want to build it for your own company. And then deciding on what system to have. So we have now the theory, the objectives of what we want to achieve. We know which system that we need to do it in. Then started the hard work of actually start to plan out how are we going to implement this system, and what kind of modules and functions are we going to use from start or implement later. And we we were actually quite satisfied with the setup that Catalyst One already had, which you see here on the screen, and we were from then able to distribute and give responsibilities out in our own organization to make sure that we, of course, had ownership of the entire implementation and were involved and also engaged all the way through. So when distributing different roles and responsibilities, we took a lot of it internally, and also made sure to involve big parts of the organization when creating these responsibilities, to make sure that the involvement happened all around and not just from HR, as we of course have the the job to give and to create an HR system, but of course we wanted to be able to deliver much more than that, and therefore we also need to talk with colleagues within the organization to succeed in that.
And this is, I just want to add that this is something that was clear pretty early on in the relationship between NLTG and Catalyst One, because this is a picture of our standard implementation methodology when it comes to distribution responsibility and which roles to set up and so on. And we are always trying to emphasize the importance of the customer taking ownership of the implementation. And I think that's one of the key factors to why you have succeeded so quickly, I would say, and succeeded at all, and succeeded quickly, because you have really taken ownership of what what's gonna create value for you, and you've taken ownership of involving the whole organization. And I know we're going to come back to this, but I think it's important to emphasize more than once during the presentation. So this is really something that, from my perspective, we were talking about that. I've seen a lot of these journeys, and it's a difference, different approaches between different customers, but this has all the way been an approach of we want to have control, we want to own our own processes, we want to own how we use the system, which also makes it possible to make the most out of it over time. So this is not just one implementation project. It's a continuous work, and you of any people in the world would know, because you
Yeah.
obviously work in the system regularly. So just that's something I wanted to add here. But okay, so we've been touching on up on the complexity of your organization, but I think it could be interesting to dig a little bit more into what does complex mean in this case. So, and more specifically, why was it a complex task to create this consistent digital employee journey, which is a difficult
Mm.
word to say. So could you tell us a bit more about the complexity?
Yeah, if we go back to the structure of our companies, you can basically see we have to divide it into different areas, also based on how we were before we could restructure and become Nordic List Travel Group. You kind of had the hotel operation as one part. You had the travel companies as one part. You had the airline company as their own part, and then of course the retail company, something separate as well. So already now we can establish that we have kind of four different units that are not working that close together, who are not very aligned in systems, routines, and Also in terms of HR, maybe not, we weren't maybe working as one HR as much as we are now when having these different companies. So now we're merging all that into one NLTG, and then we have to figure out how to create a system that can deliver to all of these different places. Not only that, we have to think about the different nationalities and the different countries. There's a lot of legalities, a lot of law that comes into place as well when working with HR data, with working with the onboardings, contracts, all of that that the system delivers to us. So how can we make sure that we have a system that can deliver to all these kind of different units, but also these different countries and who are working in those countries? How do we reach all of these different people, to make sure that we get a well functioning system when we then have it implemented? So already now it's kind of a lot of things happening on the screen, and that's the same thing for us when then trying to figure out what kind of processes to work with. When looking at all of that, we kind of put it into four different employee units. So basically, we have our hotel staff working in the hotels abroad. We have all of our flight crew, which means basically cabin crew and our pilots in the air. We then have what we call resort staff. Those are Nordic employees working abroad for us, so our reps working in destination basically. And then we have what we call Nordic offices, which is then everyone who is left, all of those of us who are working in one of the four different Nordic countries in one of our offices basically. And then looking at who can we then put into the system and who can actually actively work with that system. And the reason why the circle goes across the hotel staff circle is basically because our hotel staff are more or less, I would say, around um, 1,000, 1,500 staff, more or less, but not all of them have work accounts. Not all of them have an IT account that they use in their daily work. So when figuring out how to work with this, we said quickly that all of those who do not have an IT account will not be implemented to the system, as we will work with digital processes, also in terms of how to activate and create user accounts over time. So those of the hotel staff who have, they get included, and then the rest of the employers will be included into the system, who have IT accounts from start. But then again, having to work with those different kind of units is how we're gonna approach the system to make sure that we do things with different timelines and also focus on different things with the different kind of staff. So when just not implementing the system, but actually adding all of our staff to the system and from them asking them to work with it, we did it in uh, three different timelines. As you can see, we got started really quickly with our Nordic office staff, those working in the offices who are administrative, who already work from a laptop, who have easy access to the HR system from day one. Then continuing to our staff abroad, but also the one in the air. And then in the end, we took all of that local resort and hotel staff, those working directly in the hotels. So we had to kind of figure out how to get everyone into the system and also make sure to kind of do three different implementation, as we quickly figured out that working with some processes will be easy to do with kind of Nordic office staff. Those processes won't necessarily work with our hotel staff. So what are we going to focus on when implementing those? Cultural differences, how many are used to working with HR system or working in systems to begin with, and who are not. So there was a lot of work just going into figuring out how we're going to get everyone into the system and how are we going to work with different processes and different kind of setups for these different kind of employee units that we in the end could say that we had.
Right. So then, yeah, well, then we know a bit about the complexity. So that's was a good description. And but we still don't. I think we know a little bit about how you dealt with it, but we don't know everything, and we want to know more. So what was the recipe for success? If you, yeah, if you could put that in a few words.
Yeah. So basically everything I've shown up until now is still just the theoretical part and kind of what we decided on how we're going to do things. It still hasn't really said anything of how we actually managed and succeed, because we have now just decided on what kind of groups do we have in the company and how we're going to approach them. From there, we then had to have meetings every week with the project leaders. We had to kind of gather all competencies in one room, because already now we've established that we have four different employee units. We have uh, eight different nationalities. We want to have an IT integration with the user accounts. Already now we have five or six different kind of parts of the organization who has to come together to discuss these kind of things to figure out how we're going to solve this, how we're going to do it. Um, and when then figuring out on the way what needed to be done or what kind of integration that we wanted to have and how we were going to work with things. Other departments were then brought in to give their inputs to make sure that we weren't just creating something that we thought was the right way to do it, but we actually got inputs for those who are going to work with it to make sure that it actually fit the purpose and that it was useful for the ones who were in the end going to sit and work with the system with these different kind of functions. We tried again with meetings every week to have close cooperations, knowledge share all around, try to bring up ideas, find out solutions, figure out how we're gonna do this, at least to begin with, to see how we're gonna implement the system and then develop from there. And one of the things that we managed to do was to create a Microsoft Teams channel, a quite big channel where we uploaded all the files and the information that we were sharing with each other. But we also created kind of a community where there was a possibility to just have quick chats with one another, make a quick post with one question where everyone else could chime in, come with their opinion, or come with their knowledge to make sure that everyone could continue their work and continue to prepare and figure out how to do everything. And up until this day, we still use this channel in some ways to have discussion or ask questions or trying to figure out solutions to current problems. We have more than 40 members in this challenge who can chime in at any time they want, and they are from HR, IT, finance, our airline company, from the customer center, a lot of different competencies in one place. And we still have a lot of files and documentation from the implementation to go back to from there. And all of this kind of brought the project group closer together, of course, but it also brought all the other parts of the organization close into the project to make sure that when we did something, it was actually to develop the whole business and not just HR or not just IT. And then from there, we made sure that at least working closely with the project implementation, that HR and IT were working very closely and basically almost daily having conversation, which we still do to up to this date. We still have reoccurring meetings between us and HR and IT to consistently look at the system and improve it. So this is something that we still do.
So it's actually created new relationships within the company. It sounds like, and also I'm curious here because a lot of the success here is built upon involvement, engagement, and you seem to have a lot of engaged people. We're going to get into how to get people engaged later, but how there's a Swedish word called lagom, and that means not too much, not too little. Um, how did you secure that the involvement was lagom in this case? Because it could easily be too many people involved, and then the value from involvement would decrease. But also, it's
Mm.
really important to get enough people involved. So how did you manage to get this lagom situation?
I think a part of the success in that was when setting up the objectives and kind of setting up the project. What do we want to obtain? What do we want to happen when we implement the system? Knowing from start exactly what we wanted to do, we could from there easily say, okay, but these are the kind of people that we need to get involved from beginning. These are the project leaders, and these are the ones who are gonna, in the end, be the one who take the decision whether we go left or right. Then from there, involving other departments when input is needed, we could then easily take in people from left and right, ask for input, and then being able to go back, look at the objective and say, we can do this, we can do that, or maybe this is something that we won't be able to do now, but we can do it in the future. So having a clear objective made it easy to also always go back and say, but this is only what we can succeed in. And um, as project leaders say, well, we can't do that now, or this is maybe something for the future, or we appreciate the input, but we need to limit it in terms of what is the time frame or what is it that we want to achieve to start with. And then, of course, something that also contributes to the success is also the kind of culture that we do have in the company. So there's always been a culture of asking questions and being curious and wanting to know more and wanting to know what the other one's doing. And we have a lot of people in the organization who has a background that comes from different places in the organization, just like myself. So that also creates a different kind of knowledge within the project leader groups, but also from the other organizations. It's easier to understand why something can happen and why something cannot happen when everyone's is informed and when everyone knows um, why something is the way it is, and how our company is structured to begin with. So I think that was also a great part of the success, that we do have some culture in the company that creates that involvement from start. But then of course we cannot take that for granted. So we of course made sure that that kind of culture was also brought into the project to begin with. Again, saying a part of the objective was to make it fun, rewarding, and developing to do a good job. That is part of our people promise, and we wanted to make sure that was also a main objective of creating the system.
So maybe company culture would be a webinar of its own at some point, because
It
it
basically
really
could
sounds
be.
like, yeah, sounds like, or I know that that has been a really critical key success. Um, yeah, yeah, that has been part of the success. So, but did you? In any way meet any resistance in this? Because now it sounds like there was a great company culture, there was a lagom involvement from left and right and different kinds of the organization. But did you at any point get resistance?
Of course, and I think that's quite normal because, of course, they are a lot of people who know how the company is structured, but when implementing a new system, that means a lot of changes, a lot of new information, a lot of new ways to do something, and there's a lot of people who um, or not a lot of people. I think nobody loves change. I think that's a very natural human part of life, that we actually just want everything to be exactly as it was. And then when we've gotten used to change, that's when we start to enjoy it. But a big part of it is also to make sure that we just start somewhere and inform people to start somewhere and say, well, of course, we cannot be without a system, and this will do a lot of great things in the future, but in the beginning it will be new for everyone. And I think by informing, and kind of have some change management in the back of your head helped us get through a lot of it in the end.
Yeah, all right. So let's move away from involvement and cooperation and potential resistance in company culture for a while. But process-wise, what can you tell us? Where did you start, and which parts of the organization? How did you go about doing this?
Mm. Well, basically you have to start somewhere, and again, having clear objectives makes you able to say, well, this is possible or this won't be possible, or maybe this will be possible in the future, but we need to focus on the basics right now. And having a complex organization, it's almost impossible to succeed anywhere. So when you then know what system to work with, how you're going to handle your data, and what kind of functions that the system is going to deliver, well, you then have the system established. Now you just need to figure out what to do with everything around it and how to accommodate that for everyone who is in need of the system. And basically knowing from start that you won't make a perfect system, you just have to start somewhere. So from the knowledge that we had, from the information and the input that we got, and knowing that there is a lot of change management needing to happen as well, we knew from start that not everything would be correct from the beginning, but we were ready to just do something basically and then improve it and develop it over time. So we basically just try to figure out what kind of processes can we work with, create something, maybe create something basic to begin with, and then when we have to start using it, use the feedback and the input coming from everyone using it to then improve it over time. Um, and that means, of course, creating the processes that are HR related, creating them as we want them, try to create something that is useful for everyone else, change it and make it better if it isn't useful or easy to do correctly. And then, of course, um, then starting to involve more and more people from these different employee units to get them involved, or maybe even have them know how to work the system so they can actually start creating or amending their own processes. So in the end, like when the system was already there, set up, working, we could then slowly actually start to push some processes away to say, well, our team, us in the project leader group, we're actually not going to use this process ourselves in any way. This is your process. We have created something to begin with. If you want to develop it, if you want to make it in the perfect way for you, you have that mandate. You are able to actually take on that process yourself and actually work on it yourself. So today we do have a lot of routines, a lot of processes that are different in a lot of places, but the responsibility is actually now at that group that uses it, or that group who has to use it the most, to make sure that they know when something is working and they know when something isn't working. So why shouldn't they be able to change it when they then are the first one having that information?
And how far do you go in this in this philosophy? Is can anyone do anything, or are there any limitations?
There are, of course, limitations. There are some limitations that are by the system by default that we, of course, try to work around and find efficient routines for. And then, of course, there are a lot of other functions that we have just made available for most part. So when it comes to working with the workflow function in the system, basically any workflow can be set up by any manager, so they can just start the flows when they are relevant, instead of having someone from HR do it, because the leader usually knows first. When it comes to changing information, access to HR data, in uh, everything following GDPR, of course, we then just make available to the ones who need the information. And having a big HR department that are working across several countries with teams in different countries, we have also tried to just make sure, well, you know this process. You actually work with, let's say, Norwegian office staff. Well, let me give you the access to work with the Norwegian office staff so you don't have to ask for help, ask for permission, or wait for someone else to do something for you. If you have the information first, you should basically be able to make that change, as that will be the quickest way to solve the issue or the challenge.
Interesting. And you're mentioning workflows. I happen to know that you like workflows.
A
So
lot.
maybe it's time to talk a bit more about the workflows and how they can create value, and how you went about when creating the workflows that you have today.
Hmm. Yeah. So for those of you who maybe don't know, when we talk about workflows in Catalyst, one is a function where you can basically create any flow that is for when people are joining the company, leaving the company, or have changes within the company. So you can create a process that clearly illustrates who has what role and what needs to be done up until certain time due dates and stuff like that. So when we talk about workflows in our company, that's basically our bread and butter in making sure that we have clear processes for the employee when they start in NLTG, when there's any change to their employment in NLTG, or if they at any point leave us. So we want to make the journey good from the minute that we offer them a job in the company, while they're in the company, and of course, if they choose to leave the company at any point, that's also actually a great experience, at that we can tick off any box that is considered a great onboarding or offboarding. Um, and again, to make that a great process, what we basically did is that we made sure that having a workflow is great. Having one workflow for everything is great as long as it works. But is something done different in a local place, we need to make sure that they have a specific workflow working for them. And in the end, when we talk about workflows, we just want to make it easy to get it started. And who can get the workflow started the quickest? The one who has the information. So if we talk about someone starting in the company, well, usually in our place at least, we have the manager of the department is usually the recruiter as well. So the manager will be the one offering a job to someone, and they will be the first ones to know that a person has agreed to work for us and now needs to start in the company. So of course the manager starts the workflow, and the manager will also be the one who has gathered all the information about the employment. So of course the manager should just be the one adding it to the system. Then, of course, we make sure that the employee as well get a proper introduction, and the workflow can also assist with that. So the employee is also one of the first people to know that they're starting. So of course, they should just get information directly about what it means to start, and all of their own information, such as address, next of kin, account information. Well, they are the first ones who have that. So of course, they should just give that to us directly in the system. And then, of course, we have a verification process put in as well. So we make sure the right HR people can double check the information, make sure nothing is missing, that everything is correct according to what kind of contract people will get. And then we also have a grandfather's principle, which means that the manager of the manager, of course, have to approve the employment. And then afterwards, we make sure that the person who is actually responsible for that task is then just given the task. So again, who has the information first? Who is it easier for? And who is actually supposed to do all of the things that needs to be done before someone starts working in the company? Well, we then delegate that task to that person or that department. And with that, we can also make sure that we put everything into a process. So every little task, whether it is something regarding IT account, or if it is for a contract, or if it's just simple thing as a manager should book meetings for the first week of the job to make sure that the new employee knows what they need to do during the first week, or they have a conversation with the manager during the first week to hear how is it going. We add all of that into the process, to the workflow, to make sure that it's also easy for any manager, regardless of how experienced they are, to give a great onboarding. So, and if every manager follows the same process, we also give an equally great onboarding to every employee, regardless of if they're working in Denmark, Norway, Spain, or whatever. So we try to make it easy to do the right thing, to say that you basically don't have to remember anything in terms of getting someone employed, as long as you just follow the process from A to Z. And we make sure that anyone who has the information first, and anyone who can actually create, like, do the task the easiest, is the one who actually then put in the information or do the task during an onboarding or any other workflow. And that's why we use this tool a lot. And of course, we have a lot of different workflows at the moment that, of course, needs to be kept updated. But that's also why we try to delegate some of that responsibility. So if we have a workflow for a certain employee unit, well, then we make sure that the ones responsible for that employee unit, the management for that employee unit, are involved in the process as well, to make sure it fits them in the best way possible.
Right. So, and I just wanted to maybe that's obvious to all the viewers here. what this actually leads to, because now we have taken the perspective of the like the information owner, so that would be the employee or the manager starting a workflow, or any other person involved. But doing this in scale, so to speak, or doing it all over the organization, making this the only way to change information about the employee or the organization, what does that lead to? Um, that's a question
Well,
that
it
I know
leads
the
to
answer to, obviously, but yeah.
well, it leads to a lot of things, but we definitely succeed with one of the objectives to one was to have one source of HR data. So if any manager was to have anything done with their employee, anyone working anywhere in the organization will know that the change has to be done in the same system in order for everything else to change. So it's also easy for us in HR to motivate a manager to start an onboarding workflow, because we then can tell that person, well, you have all the information delivered to us safely via the system, and we will make sure that the contract is made, the employee can sign it, the user account, the IT account of that person is created automatically depending on what information you put in. So we make sure that they get the right accesses from the beginning, that the account is created at the right time, and that the manager will know how to activate that account without having to get in contact with IT. So we automate a lot of things that can basically motivate us to say also, well, the reason why we want to use the system is to make it easy for you. So everything will happen automatically if you just put in the right information to begin with. Then everyone else will know what they need to do. And also we can add triggers and email triggers that make sure that when the information is then added, does someone else need to know about it? Does a scheduling department needs to know about a new employee being added to their apartment? Well, they can get the information directly to say a new employee has been added to the system. Here are all the information that you need, and they can start putting them into that system or to their scheduling if they want to. So we automate the process a whole lot more, and we take away as many manual steps as possible um, to make it easy to do the right thing.
So, and I also happen to know that your IT department loves this system, because, as you say, this has actually been one of the preconditions to be able to automate as much as you have done when it comes to IT accounts, turning on and off licenses, and so on. So this is something that has created value not only for HR or for the specific user, for a manager, for example, that had a lot of manual steps before, but now can do it
Mm,
automized and safe and so on. But it also has spread to other parts of the organization, which you have mentioned. But I just wanted
mm,
to emphasize that as well, because this is really also a really really good result
yeah.
from the project.
Yeah,
Right. So
definitely. And let me say that this, of course, is just visually how it looks for the employee or for the manager, but behind that, there's a lot of things happening IT wise, which has gone from a manager needing to order everything manually and tell IT what kind of license and how many systems they need access to, and now the system can basically tell IT exactly what to add to that user account, and it's done like behind the scenes without the manager even noticing it.
mhm. Right. So, but also in this on this slide you were talking about and earlier that there's been a great flexibility and freedom for anyone who has input to come with it and to maybe get it done. So and Catalyst One is a flexible system that allows for different settings for different categories and so on. That could also be something that drives what should you say complexity in another kind of way. So if it's flexible, then it could be maybe too flexible. But I know that you have a philosophy and you have ways of working to make sure that everything is lean at all times. Could you say something about lean management, which you are working actively with, and how that has impacted the project and
Mm.
the results of it?
Yeah, when we talk about processes in general and we talk about it should just be easy to do the right thing, we are basically talking a lot about lean management and how to think about processes. So when we started to digitalize and when we basically wanted to have a system, we also wanted to take away as much waste as possible in terms of what takes a long time, what is overproduced, what kind of information do we put in several times in several places. if if the manager can say they need to have this kind of salary, just put it one time in the system. That salary should basically just pop up in any system where it needs to be, so in the salary system or whatever, to make sure that the manual task only has to be done once. So not just when implementing the system, but also today when we're working with developing our processes and ways of working, we always try to look at waste. What is actually taking a lot of time, or what if the reasons that you're always waiting on something? If you want something done, you should be able to do it immediately, and you should see the result immediately in a dream world. And is it something that is difficult to do in the right way? Well, then we need to make it easy to do it correctly. So for everyone to know what to do, you also have to make that easy accessible. Because if it's difficult in knowing what to do, you cannot expect people to at all do it or do it in the right way. And then, of course, when trying to take away waste and to improve our processes, we try to understand the situation. We try to understand, okay, what needs to be improved? What was the feedback? Then we try to see, okay, what if we change the system to this? Or what if we try to make this small change? How does that look when we then test it? Did it work according to plan? Is there other issues or experiences that we need to take into account? And then we of course make changes again, or we then say, well, this is now the new process, so this is how we work with something. This is something that we still do to this day. So the earliest workflow that we have been working with still gets small changes all the time to make sure that everything works as efficiently as possible, and that we don't overproduce or make something more difficult than it has to be, in order to, yeah, to make a process as lean as possible, basically.
Mhm. So, and I guess this is something when you mentioned as well that you work with generally in the organization. So this was not something that you made up just to implement the HCM system, but this is in your DNA, so to speak.
Yeah, we have lean management in our organization as a part of HR. So we do have lean management in-house, and that has definitely been a huge support system. And has also been something that we have had in the project group. So lean management has been an active part in the implementation all the way through.
Mhm. Good. So I work in sales and I love sales. And there's a part of an implementation project and a success of an implementation project that is sales as well, internally on the customer side, that is. You have been talking about involvement, engagement, asking questions, getting people to engage. And also maybe a little bit about articulating what's in it for this particular person. So what's in it for me? What's in it for you? But I would like to know a bit more about this selling exercise or the change management as well, because obviously everyone didn't have input or were sold to in the project, but somehow everyone is expected to use the system. So how have you worked with internal sales and change management?
Well, one of the first things that we made sure was to inform, and make sure that while informing about everything happened, that we could evolve, we could make sure to train, and that we also, as the project leaders, had some courage and also some patience in terms of getting everything out. So we knew that would be some resistance or questions, or some people maybe not liking how things were supposed to become, but then keep being transparent about why we're doing it, how is it going to help, how does the future scope look, why do we want to make it this way, to make it easier and better for you as an employee, or you as a leader, or you as an entire department. And then just keeping involving and informing about everything that happens, to make sure that people feel that this is something that is important to them and that is relevant to them. And then, of course, over time making sure that we actually step away from calling it an HR system, but calling it an employee system, because it's not just a system for HR. It's a system that is, of course, led by HR, containing HR data, but the system does a lot more. And it's about the employee journey. It's about working with employees in general when it comes to learning, development, and performance, and that's why it's an employee system. It's not just an HR system. So also by just calling it that, we make sure that it's from the employee point of view that we have the system, and not just from the HR point of view. But also trying to get people involved, we tried to look at our own values, which were actually kind of great in line with Catalyst One, and I also think that was a reason for the great result, that it kind of worked for us. But really try to sell it to everyone in the company. So we try to also think, okay, but who is working with HR data in any way? Because there's a lot of parts of the company who needs to work with HR data in some way, whether it is just names, salary data, FTEs, efficiency, whatever. Need to identify them and say, hey, this is something that we're going to do, or we're going to have that data in one place. How would you like to use it? Or in which way would you like to get that information? Or how do you work with it now? Then we started to question and challenge them to say, like, but what would you like the system to deliver? How would you, if you could get that data in the best way possible for you in any way, how would you like it? And then start to question and challenge ways of working in other departments as well, to help them develop from that new system that would be available. And then of course doing it from the start to make sure we have an idea of what are the needs and wishes from the business. What did we want to attain? What were our objectives? Okay, but what did everyone else want? Can we make that happen as well? Does something need to wait? What is the most important? What would create most value? And keeping them informed and of course involved all the way through to kind of engagement, to say, so this is going to happen, or we expect that we can do this at this time, to kind of make sure that we again don't take that direct culture for granted, but we keep people informed and engaged at all times. Say, now this is going to happen, or we expect this to happen, or we will follow up during this time. And then, of course, all the way through, we try to focus on the cooperation between IT and HR all the way through, because, of course, we had the HR data, but we also had that IT integration in the back, saying that, okay, but everyone in the system has a user account. How we're going to work efficiently with that? What does other department needs in terms of IT accesses or user accounts? How quickly do they need it, to make sure that we always thought about it from an HR data perspective, but also from an IT perspective all the way through. And then when doing something, as I said before, we just tried out some things from the from base case scenario and said, we think this is going to work. We got the feedback, we changed it, we tried to improve it, we keep getting feedback, try to inform, now this is the way it is, see if it works, get back to us, and kept the organization informed and talked to their needs. So when implementing the system, when making updates in the system, it wasn't, now we have done this to help us. No, we have made this change, or now we are working with the system in this way to make it easier for you, or to create this kind of value for you as an employee or as a leader, to make sure that we keep talking about it as an employee system, and how it creates value to the employee journey, and how it creates value to the individual, and not just a an HR department or the business in general. And then of course we kept training and we kept training, and we still keep training, and we keep remembering that change takes time, and we're still working a lot with processes, and we're still developing and making a lot of changes to what we have done over time, to make sure that we can keep improving and keep engaging the organization to help us improve it.
That's really interesting. And also, time is running out, and we have questions. I have been trying to get them into the presentation, but we have some left that we won't have the time to take now. So we'll answer each and one of you who answered questions in writing. And then also it's time to thank you, Zakaria, and thank all the viewers. And I hope that all of you, as myself, have thought that this was interesting, engaging, and that you learned something. So thank you very
And
much.
thank you very much from here for being able to share and to talk to you guys. So thank you a lot from here as well.